Pacific Nations Cup semi-final number 2, folks, and it was Japan taking on Samoa from Japan. Much better crowd than the last couple of days, which makes sense given that the home side was playing. Bloody hot, needed water breaks, like you could tell with the way the players were running for the shadows to take their water breaks rather than standing in the blazing sun, that it's still pretty hot. And it's Japan that booked their spot in the final up against Fiji next week with a 49 points to 27 win over Manu Samoa. We'll go through some of the key events and some of the stats, but ultimately, Japan's kicking game, very, very slick. Lee really pulling the strings at the back for the Japanese. Some nice set plays, bit of variation at times, but the breakdown work leaves a lot to be desired. For Samoa, man, they made some chances from a lot limited ball, like a lot less ball. They still managed to, generate a fair bit. If they'd had better hands, this game certainly gets a bit closer. They had to make a lot of tackles in this game, but they also won a lot of turnovers. So, yeah, you guys can let us know what your thoughts are. You might have to give me some insights, because I'll admit, I watched this one in the car on my phone, largely, because we got invited to a family event, and I kept ducking out to watch the game. I managed to watch the game in its entirety, but when you're on a screen that size, I'm sure I missed a whole lot. But certainly, as I said, it looked hot, and the crowd looked better. And it all started Japan. They had the ball in the Samoan half for what felt like ages. Japan, interestingly, when they were winning penalties, were opting for touch, not for poles. They opted to maul it, which was interesting because it's not something we've traditionally seen from the Japanese pack a lot. That's what I mean about they kind of had a bit of variation in their set play. Like they had line-out moves, scrum moves, maul, apparently. They ended up going close with the maul and close via the backs before Malolo was able to win a nice turnover. But, the clearance was still kind of not clean from the Samoans, and it didn't really matter that they had defended for that long period and won the turnover because Riley was able to go over a few minutes later. He continues his largely pretty good form for the Japanese, 7 points to 0. And the Lee dinking kicks really meant the Samoan guys were just struggling just to get an exit and to get some ball, especially in the Japanese half. Very, very hard to come by. A second try came for the Japanese not long later. It's a penalty try. Alofipo is pinged for a handout. That one I have less of a problem with than, for example, the Vili LaRue one. I mean, again, I understand the laws for deliberate knock-ons are you stick one hand out for the ball, whether you catch it or not, often decides whether you get yellow carded. He had no chance of catching that one, I don't think. So he gets yellow carded, and because there's only him out on the wing, and there's a one Japanese guy outside who would have taken the pass, as ruled to be a deliberate knock-on and a yellow card and a penalty try, so 14 points to 0. It's all look at Japan. Samoa hasn't really even exited their half. But credit to them, despite the yellow card, they got their first points of the game through Tuitama. There's Tuitamas on both sides, which makes things, I don't want to say confusing, but it's a surname on both sides, that's for sure. Tuitama for Samoa is able to get the try. It was the big number 8, what's his name? Mapu. Big carry, and Yona to Tuitama to finish the try off. So 14 points to 7. That at least stops some of the momentum for the Samoan guys, able to kind of halt the bleeding. But Japan replied, Lee, what a cross kick. He's getting smoked, and he still manages to get the cross kick away. So, Osada is the recipient of that one. Japan extend the lead 21 points to 7. That's when they take the first water break. And as I said, it's been played at a high tempo. You've already had 4 tries in the first 20 minutes. You've had a yellow card in the first 20 minutes. The players are looking pretty knackered. They're heading for the shade, having some water. It's a good break, though, I feel, because after the water break, Samoa come out a lot better. So it's almost like having a halftime break, the water break. It can disrupt some momentum. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but it was just interesting that after the water break, Samoa won a penalty. Like their breakdown work suddenly took a massive, leap forward. They managed to win a penalty. The breakdown up for 3, 21-10. Another one of the breakdown a few minutes later, 21-13. So 6 points in a row for them. having just conceded 7. And then they went, I reckon, a game-changing moment. So close from a line-out move from Mo Ayono. If he goes over, I mean, it's game on. But he gets held up. And then that Japanese arresting of the Samoa momentum meant that they were able to go over some advantage line carries. They were able to get the kind of much-needed try before halftime through Lee himself. It was good to see him finish one, not to set them up. So, 28-13, they go into the sheds. Could have been like 21-20 if Samoa get that try earlier. But ifs, buts, and maybes kind of aren't worth that much. But you get what I mean. I mean, if you're looking at the numbers, possession 70-30 at halftime. The passes, there's been 122 to 30. There's been 81 carries to 30. Like, Samoa's just got 30 of stuff. Not enough. But where they are excelling is like 4 turnovers 1-1. And they're tackling the house down. And they've also still been able to make a few line breaks, which is good given they've had really kind of bugger all ball. Second half, they come out. Still looking pretty hot, to be fair. And Japan continue to concede penalties at the breakdown, which is going to be something concerning for their appearance in the final. But it doesn't matter because turnover ball and another kick from Lee. I think this time through for Osada. Sees Shimokawa able to go for a try. It's a great finish. 35 points to 13. Game loses a bit of its flair when both sides, you feel like, missed chances, especially out wide in space. Some of the handling lets them down a bit. But when the Samoan hands stick, you see a try through Matavao with the nice support line on the left wing to make it 35-20. But again, right as Samoa threatened to kind of steal that momentum away from the game, Japan are kind of able to halt it. They find a nice touch finder. They're able to go through a bunch of phases on attack, and then Fujiwara with the snipe. I don't know if he planned it, but there was a kind of bobbling ball out the side of a ruck, and he just goes for kind of a wee show and go. And 42 points to 20. That's pretty much like there's no coming back from there. I mean, there's still time, but I mean, Japan almost got another one from a kick, and then Lalomilo in return goes basically into the field from their own half for the Samoans to make it 42-27. It's the final scoring for the Samoans. The Japanese still had one more in them right before full time with a nice scrum set play, which set up Takahashi. So, man, a ton of tries in this game. 7 tries to 3, so 10 tries in the game. A couple of penalties from the Samoans, but ultimately Japan, pretty good value for the win. You don't really score 7 tries to 3 by luck. I do feel like if Samoa could have had a bit of ball or maybe score that try before halftime, maybe I think they probably still lose, but maybe 37-33 or something. Maybe it's bonus point territory. Not that there's bonus points when it's this final round, but you know what I mean. Could have been within 7, but again, the ifs, buts, and maybes aren't worth a lot. Carries 140 to 75. Japan had a lot of ball, man. But clean breaks 8-7 to Samoa. So they did sometimes a bit more with a bit less. The tackle percentage reads better for the Samoans. They made 182 tackles to Japan's 77. Samoa missed 22 of those 182. Or is it plus 182? Either way. They only missed 22 when they made 182. Japan had 77 and missed 18. So Japan's tackle rate is at 81%, whereas the Samoans are 89. So defensively, you feel like the Japanese will not be 100% satisfied, even though if they did manage to put 49 points on the board, that's pretty sweet. But, still room for improvement. The Samoan lineout's no good. Finished at 50%, so, I mean, Dearns was pretty good at disrupting there as well for the Japanese. 100% for the Japanese on their own throw. Individuals. Both the Tuitamas had 11 carries for each of these two teams. Malolo had 4 dominant tackles, so he's a big unit, plus 1 a turnover. Alosio finished with 108 meters. Remember, he got that big carry for his try, which clocks up a few of those. Lee, man, with that smart kicking game, finishes the game with 4 try assists. Pretty magnificent shift from him. Dearns with the 6 line-out wins. Really, really busy at kind of set-piece time. But yeah, sets up a good final. You think, prior to the start of the competition, it looked for all money to be a Japan-Fiji final. That's the way it's panned out. So kind of no real shock there. But it should be an interesting one. And the campaign is not over for the Samoans. Remember, they have the United States to play in the final matchup for them to kind of decide who gets third place. But yeah, Pacific Nations Cup, albeit on my phone. Apologies if this is kind of a bit more of an abridged version. I was trying to be social and watch rugby at the same time, which is not always easy to do when you're not at a game or not on your couch with your mates. You're at your mate's place watching the game when you're just kind of ducking in and out of a vehicle on a phone watching the game. Bit different. But yeah, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I would appreciate it. Pacific Nations Cup action. One more round to go. I'll be covering that hopefully from my home instead of on my phone. You guys take care and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.